Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor. So today, Mythos Monday has returned, and today we're going to be talking about choosing the right H.P. Lovecraft collection for you. You need... Why is it so dark? Yes, choosing the right H.P. Lovecraft collection for you. For a fella who didn't write that much fiction, there are an awful lot of H.P. Lovecraft collections floating around. And so you might wonder, well, I'm interested in this fella H.P. Lovecraft because I loyally watch Mythos Monday every Monday. And I was really disappointed last week because Mike didn't have one up. Damn him. But I loyally watch Mythos Monday every week. But I don't know which edition to get. So that is what I'm going to be helping you out with today. There are a couple of videos like this out there. Which H.P. Lovecraft edition to choose out of the many editions out there. And I haven't been happy with any of those videos, so I am making one of my own. And I've got a few H.P. Lovecraft editions to show you that I would recommend. The biggest recommendation, though, before I even start, is to talk about the text of H.P. Lovecraft. When H.P. Lovecraft initially had his stories published, sometimes the text was changed depending on which piece of writing was being published. Some texts were changed more than others. Words were substituted, words were changed, paragraphs were broken up, sentences were sometimes changed entirely. There are a lot of textual issues with the fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. It was that way when they were initially published in magazine form. Then there were further issues when it was originally published in Arkham House. And then there were more issues when these texts were published for the first time in paperback. So depending on which text you're reading, there could be a very small to a significant difference in the story. Sometimes the change is tiny. Sometimes kind of makes a difference. Particularly with stories like At the Mountains of Madness or The Shadow Out of Time. Some of those stories were changed here and there in the text. But S.T. Joshi, Lovecraft scholar and editor S.T. Joshi, back in the 80s when he was a young S.T. Joshi, took upon himself the project of correcting all the texts of H.P. Lovecraft's fiction. And so he found as many of the original typescripts and as many of the original manuscripts as he could for H.P. Lovecraft. And he went through the texts of the published stories against the texts of the original versions, the most authoritative version that he could find, whether that was a typescript or a manuscript. And he would correct them. And he corrected all of Lovecraft's fiction. And he did that initially for Arkham House, which is how I originally read H.P. Lovecraft as a teenager. There were 4 Lovecraft volumes published by Arkham House that were corrected for the most part by S.T. Joshi in this set. And that's how I initially read these stories. There were still stories out there with textual issues, but eventually more original manuscripts and typescripts came to light. Lovecraft was able to go back and correct some more. So the later editions that you have of these things, the more correct they are. So S.T. Joshi is an interesting guy. He is a critic as well as being an editor, a pretty severe one. And so a lot of people don't like S.T. Joshi. Because he tends to hate a lot of the writers that a lot of us like. He hates some writers that I like. What'd he do? He's a critic. But I do appreciate the work that he did. He did an awful lot of work on H.P. Lovecraft. He is the authority on H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote the definitive biography of H.P. Lovecraft, I Am Providence, which is a fantastic biography. You can get that as an ebook pretty readily, I think, still. But definitely the first thing you want to do is check and see if your edition, whichever edition it is, has his texts. And you can usually find that in the beginning of the book somewhere, in the small print. They'll usually acknowledge S.T. Joshi. So those are the texts you want. But they're floating around in a few different books. And depending on how you want to read Lovecraft, it can kind of depend on which ones you want to get. So I'll show you just a few so you can make a choice. If you just want a 1-volume edition of his best stuff, this is the one to get. This is the Library of America volume, H.P. Lovecraft Tales. This has all his major stories. There's a couple that are missing from this, which I think probably should be in there. I don't think the Hound is in here. But otherwise, yeah, this has everything major. So if you want to read everything major by H.P. Lovecraft and you want the correct texts, this is the one to get. This was actually edited by Peter Straub, but the text used is S.T. Joshi's text. This is a great, great book. Library of America. I'm going to do a video on Library of America one of these days, just because I think they're pretty great publisher. As it says on the back, the Library of America, a non-profit publisher, is dedicated to preserving America's best and most significant writing in handsome, enduring volumes featuring authoritative texts. So you're getting the real stuff when you get this one. And as a book, they're right when they're talking about durable. If you get a Library of America volume, it will last your entire life. These are just splendidly created books. They are lovely to look at, have like the really thin, Bible-y kind of paper because they got to pack a lot in these little compact volumes. And they are compact. They're great. I love these books. High quality books. So it's a great book to have. It has everything major. If you don't want to go that route and you want to just try a sample of H.P. Lovecraft, I would get the Penguin volume, The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories. And this is just such an awesome cover. I love it. So if you just want to try out maybe one that isn't gigantic, but you want to try out his fiction, I would recommend this volume, The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories. This one is edited by S.T. Joshi himself. Great introduction. This one has a ton of notes in the back, which are great. So every story, he tells you where it was initially published. He has tons of notes about the story itself. Awesome edition. So this is a good one to try out. Plus, Library of America publishes 2 other H.P. Lovecraft volumes. So if you like this one has a great sampling of his stories. But if you like that one, you can just get the second one. This is it here. This is an older edition of it, back when they still had Penguin 20th Century Classics, which they don't. Now they're just classics because, the 20th century is over and stuff. Considering how the new century is going, that's unfortunate. But this is still being published as a regular Black Spine edition. This is The Thing on the Doorstep and Other Weird Stories. This one is notable not just for having The Thing on the Doorstep, which is a great story, but it also has 2 short novels, At the Mountains of Madness, and it also has The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, which I've got to talk about on a Mythos Monday someday soon. Great edition. So this is the second volume from Joshi, and then every other story pretty much that is left from H.P. Lovecraft, you can get in this third volume. This is The Dreams in the Witch House and Other Weird Stories. You actually have a lot of his early stories that are in here. You got the entire novel, The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, The Shunned House, The Lurking Fear, Hypnos, The Nameless City, The Doom That Came to Sarnath. A lot of good stuff is in here, actually. So you can try this just to see if you really dig Lovecraft after all, and you should because he's awesome. And then you can get the other 2 volumes, and then you've got pretty much all of his fiction. There are a few stories that you're not going to get in here, but they're not major stories. If you're a completist, you're going to want them, I guess. But if you're not, if you just want to read all of his major stories, all of the real stuff, get these 3 volumes and you're set. They're excellent editions, all edited by S.T. Joshi. I recommend them all. But if you want to get the big 1-volume edition of H.P. Lovecraft, this is an awful good one to get. There are a couple out there that are pretty good. I think, is it Race Point Press that has one that's pretty good? Knickerbocker Press, which might be them actually. I should research this sort of thing. They had a good one, I think. But this is the one I like the best for a 1-volume. This is the Barnes & Noble edition of H.P. Lovecraft, The Complete Fiction. This is still readily available at your local Barnes & Noble or online. It's ginormous, and it's really purty. This is a nice edition. I love it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mean, look at that. That's some cool stuff going on in that book, those end papers right there. Great book, but it has every story that isn't a collaboration. Actually, it even has a couple of his collaborations. But it has all of his fiction, all edited again by S.T. Joshi, so it has the best versions of the stories available. And also, under the stories title, you have notes by S.T. Joshi that tells you a little bit about the story, where it was first published. So every single story in this volume has one of those notes. And this is everything except for some of the revisions. And those revisions, with a couple notable exceptions, aren't great. There were a couple stories that were written by other people that he just kind of tinkered on. He didn't do a ton of work that are okay. But most of his major revisions, where he did most of the work and just got a story idea from somebody else, most of them are not great. Like if the mound were suddenly to disappear from the face of the earth, I don't know that many Lovecraft fans would cry over that. But this book right here is fantastic. So if you just want everything in 1 volume, boom, you've got it right there. So for the completist, there's that. I highly recommend that. Last, but definitely not least, if you're really, really into this guy, I mean, if you've gotten this far and you're like, man, I love Lovecraft. I want to know every little bit about every one of his little stories in intimate detail. Well, there is an ultimate edition of H.P. Lovecraft, the ultimate H.P. Lovecraft set. Also was revised by S.T. Joshi. Now this one, S.T. Joshi went back yet again as an older man after doing a bunch of research throughout his many years. Now he's a middle-aged fella. Even older than me, if you can believe it. And so he's rethought some things after looking further into Lovecraft's work. So he's tweaked the texts yet again. And he came out with the ultimate set. And this set is special because it's a variorum edition, which means that it has listed every change to the stories as they've been published. So if you want to know why he changed something, you will get your answer. And that's a 3-volume set. They're all very shiny. This is the variorum. It's this. There are some words that are just impronounceable by human beings. Cthulhu and variorum are 2 words that cannot be pronounced by humans. But yeah, this set right here. This is volume 1, 1905 to 1925. Look at that guy hiding out back there. We see you, buddy. Cool picture of Lovecraft on the back. Each one of these editions has a nice photograph of H.P. Lovecraft. These are published, by the way, by Hippocampus Press. So that's volume 1. You can get volume 2 here, 1926 to 1930. That creepy old cover there. These have great covers. And the last edition of these is 1931 to 1936. Now, these are still available from the publisher in paperback. I don't know that they have any hardcover editions anymore. If you really want a hardcover edition of this set, they will set you back a bit. They're pretty expensive. They were expensive when they came out. They're still expensive. But you can get them all on paperback, and I think you can even get ebook copies of these. So yeah, and these are cool because, like I said, if you look here at a page, if you look at the bottom, it'll tell you every difference and every change that have been made through the various major publications of these stories. So if you're a scholar of any kind, if you're working on these stories, that's pretty good. He also has some notes and some things that were taken out of the stories are put there in the notes, so you get extra Lovecraft in these guys. Even more Lovecraft. So this edition, the Variorum edition, is magnificent. Highly, highly recommend this set if you're really, 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 really into them. I might be. I might be really into this guy's stuff, which explains why I even have these books. So I would recommend those if you're like really into this guy. If you're not, if you don't need it to be like, if you don't need to know the answer to every textual question, if you just want a really, really decent edition that has been corrected, it just doesn't have the extra tweaks, then you can get any one of these books that I've just recommended, and they're all excellent. You know you're reading the real Lovecraft, not the editorially messed with Lovecraft, which you're going to get if you read some other editions. Which leads me to the problem of ebook copies. He's in the public domain, H.P. Lovecraft. So there's like a million different ebook editions of varying quality. Some of these have taken S.T. Joshi's texts and used them. A lot of these have not. A lot of ebook texts are using the old-timey texts that were published in paperback back in the day that had major changes to them in some cases. So if you're getting a cheapo ebook copy, very likely that's what you're going to get. And you're not going to know because they're not going to tell you, because it's just some dude or some dudette who has, you know, downloaded a copy of the text and is now selling it on their own. It's ebook, man. Ebooks are the Wild West when it comes to the public domain. And a lot of those have terrible formatting. A lot of them have ridiculous errors. Ebooks have issues when it comes to the cheapo public domain stuff. I would go with an actual edition published by an actual publisher. So that's that. That's my little video. And my goodness, it went on a lot longer than I thought it would. Well, thanks for your tolerance and patience. I will catch you next time here at Stately Vaughn Manor. Tomorrow, I've got a tag for you. Be sure to get here for that. You don't want to miss that. Oh, no! So I will catch you next time here at Stately Vaughn Manor. Bye, guys.